co-founder and CXO at Meebo. Did anyone actually use Meebo? Anyone? I did. Anyone? So awesome, one person in the back. So Meebo was a chat service that was acquired by Google in 2012. And Elaine, her two co-founders, really worked really hard on that startup. I had met their co-founders very early on when they were building the product, and I thought it was amazing. The design, the experience was simple, it was very useful, and so I'm really proud of them to see how hard they worked, and I know they worked really hard because they would disappear from time to time and then come back and be like, I'm here. I'm like, but where were you? I was working. And that's basically 2 years, 3 years would go by. But they're amazing individuals, all three of them. I know them all and I love them. And we've had Elaine on many different platforms at Women 2.0. She's done a lightning lesson. She's spoken at other conferences and events. And so we're so excited to bring her back on the stage. Elaine, please join us.
Perfect. All right. Oh, thank you for that kind introduction. I am thrilled to be here today and to talk with you about a personal project that I've been working on over the last few months. And before I get into things, I just want to double check with my best friend Dave back there. We're going to try something a little bit new and fun. And see here. Control. Oh, I think we're good. We're just getting it all synced. Are you good? Hey! All right, thank you so much, Dave. That's awesome. Cool. Perfect. Okay, we are set. All right, this personal project that I've been working on over the last few months. But before I dive right into that, I just want to tell you a little bit about myself. So my name is Elaine Wherry, as Shahar mentioned, and originally I grew up in Southwest Missouri on a goat farm. And back then, the two things that I was probably the most known for were playing the violin and also being a part of 4-H. Are there any 4-Hers? 1, 2, that's awesome. I'm telling you, like 4-H, one of the best organizations out there, outside of Women 2.0, of course. And I went from 4-H and eventually went to Stanford, and I was a late bloomer when it came to technology. Originally went to Stanford thinking I was going to major in music and econ, and then I discovered computers. And after my first job, about 2 to 3 years into it, I started working on side projects with my two really good friends, Seth and Sandy. And one thing led to another, and that eventually became the Meebo that launched in 2005, and then was sold to Google in the summer of 2012. So, before I get in, I have 150 slides to show you, to tell you about this story of Meebo and all of the mistakes along the way. But before I do that, I just want to give you a little bit of context. So that's me. That's me when I was 26, 27. And I would find myself awake at 3 a.m. As a first-time founder, I didn't know what I was doing. And at 3 a.m., I would be thinking about all the mistakes that I felt like I had made throughout the day. I would be rehearsing conversations in my head. And as a way of therapy, what I did was I started writing down all of these 3 a.m. thoughts, nightly thoughts, in my journal that I kept beside the side of my bed. And I would do this just so I could go back to sleep and then over the weekend stew on it a little bit more and just move on. And what happened is I ended up compiling this list of all of the mistakes that I was making throughout my time at Meebo. And as I started to hire more people, I started to see them make the exact same mistakes. And I realized, oh my goodness, it's not just me. But we all make the same mistakes. And it's just because we're in this crazy experience of being founders that I'm in a compressed time frame, and I can see these mistakes a little bit more easily. So then I was really excited. And I was just like, holy cow, like I have this list of mistakes. I can show it to people, and then they can avoid these mistakes too. But then I started doing that, and I would see them read the mistakes, like in a PowerPoint presentation or bulleted list, and I was like, dude, that was like years of work. And I see them hit like close, and they're just like, why does she think this is going? I'm not going to make mistakes. Like, I'm going to, you know. So what I started to do was I started to tell stories. And the context behind the mistakes and understanding the why and how really well-intentioned, talented people still fall into the same pitfalls became really, really important. So I started telling these stories, and just for fun, I started sketching these scenes, and eventually, I didn't even know I was doing it. I realized that all of the scenes that I was sketching started to have a coherent narrative from the very beginning to the very, very end. And that's what I'm going to share with you today. Around the end of Meebo, I had this huge sketchbook of all of the mistakes, and it was a story from individual contributor to CEO. And I'm not going to nitpick and tell you what the mistakes are, but hopefully through the story, you'll see some things that resonate with you, and hopefully some learnings that you can take away with you as entrepreneurs. So this is what you're going to see something that looks a lot more like this. And then just so you know, like today I am working, I've been evolving this even from what you're going to see today, and so now it's a graphic novel that I'm writing and illustrating, and I'm just probably about halfway through it, but hopefully that will be out there soon too. So the format for today is individual contributor, manager, director, vice president, and C-level. And your job is just to listen to these stories. That's it. And after each story, takes 3 minutes or so, after that, I'm going to ask you, did you see any mistakes? And then you'll just yell out a few, and then we'll move on to the next chapter. And that's it. Ready? Here we go. Individual contributor, do you guys remember the day that you first graduated from school and you had your first job? Super excited. You are a fresh grad joining the real world. The CEO tells you about this fantastic mission, and you couldn't be more thrilled to join. You have had 18 years of formal education preparing you for this very, very, very moment. You are ready. But what is this? Your code base has bugs? This report has a spelling error? This design feels a little bit hacky? You've learned how to get an A+, you've learned how to prepare for perfection. This isn't how you change the world. So within 2, 3, 4 weeks, you send out an email to the entire organization explaining, hello, this is how you fix things so that we have the perfect plan to scale to billions of people. Finally, somebody just had to set them straight. You know you are doing something right because after sending that email, no one responds to you, but after sending that email, something magical happens. You get invited to your first meeting. The moment where you have access to those closed doors, where you finally will hear all of the company's secrets. All right, you want to prove yourself. So you're sitting here, you're watching, you're observing the room, and you say, okay, that guy, wow, when he says insightful stuff, other people smile and nod. That's easy enough. Random knee-jerk reaction spoken with supreme confidence. Hey, you're participating. I realize my fonts are off, but we'll work on that. Yeah, so awkward cough. Let's keep the conversation moving along. Why isn't anyone listening? I disagree based upon knee-jerk reactions just so I can say something. If you disagree, then they have to respond to you. Yay, this is going really, really well. Then this guy says, just FYI, my amazing, shiny, gold, beautiful project, it's a little bit behind. Nothing to worry about, but Oh my gosh, pick me, pick me, pick me. I always wanted to work on a shiny, amazing gold project. So, you're talking to your manager. And it's like, hey, you've got a lot on your plate. You've got shiny gold project, you've got your normal stuff. I don't know what that email was about. And you're saying like, hey, dude, who are you talking to? This is me you're talking to. I got this. No problem, no problem, no problem. And when other people come to you and they're like, hey, do you really have your stuff together? You tell them, hey, I got this. And you tell them all about all these amazing and wonderful things just so they can see how smart you are and how confident they should be in you. So that says, meet the deadline. That depends upon Big O notation and Moore's law. And the thing is that you really are really, really far behind. You're hopelessly behind. But as you learned in college, you have one secret weapon that nobody knows about. And that is the all-nighter. There has never been a project that life has thrown at you that you haven't been able to resolve with an all-nighter. You've got this, you've got this, you've got this. Whoops. Wasn't quite as amazing as I'd like. But you know what? Just give me a 2-week extension. Meanwhile, you're talking to your cronies, and you're saying, you know what, like, the CEO, there's this big project, things aren't going as well as I'd like. You know, I want to work on something that changes the world. I want to do awesome things. And then you go to your one-on-one, and, you know, it just takes, it says, good news. I think in 6 to 12 months, I think we'll have time for that rewrite. And you're just like, oh my gosh, everything here, it moves so slowly. I can't get anything done. And in the meanwhile, all your buddies are posting on Facebook and Instagram their summer vacations. All of your friends who are still in school, they're posting pictures of their sunning vacation on the beach, and you're realizing, oh my gosh, this is my first summer I'm going to go without having, like, 12 weeks of vacation. What have I been doing for the last year here at this organization? Your manager asks, is everything good? And you're like, yeah. But the truth is, you're already out. Your buddy, he said, hey, if you're not happy there, why don't you come join my company? And you're like, you know what, like, even if your company isn't great, at least it's a change, and I'll learn something, and I'll get more perspective. You're right. I should just move on. Mistakes? All right, I'll take 2. Somebody just throw it out. What was a mistake that you saw? 3 a.m. fail. That's great. Not taking feedback. One more. Company-wide. Oh, holy cow. Yes. All right. So let's just talk about the big things. There are 1,000 things that you could have done differently, but let's just say that instead of interrupting, eventually, with time and experience, people will actually come to you for advice and help. When other teams come to you, instead of fending them off and blinding them with science, you actually sit down and you explain things to them in plain spoken English. You start thinking about time estimation, and you actually have a to-do list. And when somebody asks you how long it's going to take, you add buffer time, just because you know that you can't predict everything. And voila. Hey, congratulations, we're all promoted. Now we are managers. I want you to be manager. All right. So the thing is that you have one secret thing in your back pocket, and that's that you were just managed. You have watched all of the mistakes of your previous managers, and you know exactly what you are not going to do. You have so much empathy, and the way that you're going to manage this team is by being everybody's best friend. Awesome t-shirts, we're going to go have ice cream socials. I really care about my team. All right, well, it's time to hire and fill seats. All right, here's candidate number 1. This guy, you guys don't know it, he's a superstar. He is amazing. He goes to conferences. This is the kind of guy I want to hire. Okay, I love you so much. Please, 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 please join my team. But for some reason, he just never joins. Then there's this guy. Oh gosh, I definitely need to hire this guy. Wow, look at his confidence. He hasn't built stars, which is what our team does, but he can clearly pull it off. I know this guy. This person, this is a little bit of a tougher case. Sure, she's qualified, but, my gut says I've got to pass. So now here we are. We're leading the team. You guys, think of me as your pal, not your boss. Here's our big plan. And your big plan is to lead everything democratically. That is the way to success. And then you find out that you lead these meetings and nobody's saying anything. You guys, if no one volunteers, then I'll have to assign tasks, and that would be awful. Fine, Jacob, can you draw me a star? Sure. 2 weeks later, there's Jacob. Comes to you in the hallway, and he's like, hey, guess what? I just finished my first project. And you're looking at that, and you're like, okay, I said draw a shiny gold 5-point object. Anybody in their right mind would know that's a star. What the heck is that? What should I say? I'm blinded by this. And before you know it, Jacob has walked away. You haven't been able to make that different or bad call. And you're stewing on it. You're like, I should really talk about this in my one-on-one, but there's so many reasons that I should have been more explicit. This is a really stressful week. Oh, do I really have to address the lightning project? But you're like, you know what? It really kills me to say this. I'm going to do this. But, Jacob, corporate hates your lightning. And then one fell swoop, you have thrown all of corporate and leadership underneath the bus. But of course, backpedal, sugarcoat. But of course, I think you're special and you're amazing, and I love lightning. A few weeks later, you go by Jacob's desk and you see a lightning bolt. And you're like, what is up with this guy? I said star. I was really clear. I did the right thing. You're like, Jacob, okay, the business needs stars. Stars, stars, not lightning, stars. And then something terrible happens. And Jacob says, listen, I'm really, 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 really sorry, but my dog died last night. And that is a terrible thing. Like, anybody in their right mind, like if somebody told you on the bus that their dog just died, you would give them a hug. You would say, I am so, so, so sorry. But in the back of a manager's mind, there is 1% of their brain that is having these thoughts that they would never, ever, ever admit to, which are, really? Today is the day your dog had to die? Our release is due, the PR is spinning, and today, this is what had to happen. We're going to be even more behind. And as you're telling me about how amazing your dog is, and I know he's amazing, my to-do list and my email box is just overflowing. So what you say is, you know what, Jacob, this is really tough. Oh, man, you know, the last thing you need is this one-on-one today. You're a little bit behind, and you're like, you guys, the release, I'm trying everything. I'm promising go-karts, I am promising you vacation, I am promising you parties, beer. Why can't we deliver? Fine. You're just gonna have to dig in and do it yourself. And hopefully the team will realize that you are leading by example and following your charge. Mistakes? Not checking in, absolutely, absolutely. Waiting until all of a sudden you have a lightning moment. Any others? Yeah, not being explicit, not being explicit. It might be obvious to you that it's a star. Feedback in the moment, that is a skill. That just takes time to develop. There is no shortcut to getting that. Awesome. What is it? Oh, yeah, that nice, yeah, exactly, the veneer. Okay, cool. Well, let me just show you a few things, right? Let's say you had to redo. Wow, okay, this says agenda, proposal 1, proposal 2. But in your redo, with experience, you know, you prepare for meetings instead of just assuming that you're gonna do brainstorms and ad hoc it. You break down these monolithic goals into smaller and smaller portions, and then you hold the team responsible. If you can't predict what's going to happen in 2 months, break it down to 1 month. If you can't predict what's going to happen in 1 month, break it down to 2 weeks. And you get down all the way until you help the team be able to achieve predictability. You start working with other teams, and you're like, hey, you know, I have no agenda. I just want to talk about what we're working on. And you become better about being able to give feedback without feeling emotional and heavy-handed. And then when the dog dies, you do the right thing. It's not in your job description, but your team members want to know that you care. And voila, now we're directors. Ready? I want you to be a director. Great. And so your crazy VP says, unachievable goal. And you're thinking, oh, my VP, we just don't have the resources. And from your perspective, you feel like you have 2 options. 1, to say no and look weak, or 2, try hard and fail. So which one do you choose? And inevitably, you choose the try hard and fail because it's the VP's plan. And if something goes wrong, you can always say that you tried really, 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 really hard, but I guess that plan was just flawed from the beginning. Then you go to your team and you say, unachievable goal, 10 billion stars. And then they say, I don't think we have the resources. Oh. I agree, but this is what the VP wants. Now they know that this is really, really, really important. Meanwhile, you have to hire for this entire team, and it's the first time you've hired a team where you don't have any direct expertise in that subject. And all of a sudden, you're like, you know what? It would have been really helpful if I had networked a little bit more. But your LinkedIn profile is at 9. You know, and then while you're hiring, it turns out hiring leadership is hard. You know, you're like, oh my goodness, can you do recursion? And what this says is, she hasn't asked me about my 25 years of experience. But fortunately, that's what recruiters are for. And you go to your recruiter and you're like, hey, can you find me this manager? Problem solved. You go to your team and you're like, hey, Abby, I have so many meetings to go to. Can you be a manager? And she's like, Finally, you've delegated. Now you have time to start going to these meetings. You are so important that people have to grab you between these meetings. You are critical to this organization. Abby finally finds you. She's chasing you between meetings, waiting for you outside the door, and she says, asymmetrical shapes are cheap and fast. That's what you want, right? You're like, okay, sure, sounds good. The VP comes to you, and she's like, what is that? And you're like, oh, what was that conversation oh no. Listen, stars are more expensive. You want to, this is the only way that we're going to hit the deadline. And then he says, well, if it's more expensive, propose a budget for it. I said we need stars. And you're like, what? Nobody said I could have a budget. Nobody said I could come up with a proposal. I thought I just had to work with the resources that I had. Meanwhile, you need to nip the issue in the bud with Abby. You need to get everybody back on track again. So you roll out the amended plan with the team. And you think everyone's getting it. But for whatever reason, even after you've said it a zillion times, everyone's just operating the same old way. How do you get a message through? Now you're behind. Maybe other teams can help. Sorry, changing the roadmap requires VP approval. Well, okay, VPs need to agree. That's one thing you can do. Meetings, if it takes you 3 weeks to get all of the VPs in the room, but if there's one thing you're good at, it's having meetings. So you corral all of the VPs in the room and you're like, hey, this is the logical reason why you need to change the roadmap. And this says, if we can't reach consensus today, I'll just schedule another meeting. Oh, dear God, we're VPs, we're not going to argue in front of you. Your VP says to you, listen, could be wrong, but I feel like things aren't really going all that well. I'm just getting these kind of weird clues. And you say one of 4 things. You say, you know what, I think you're right. And what I really need to do is I just need to schedule a meeting and we can really talk about this. Or you say, you know what, I can't believe it, the lightning thing. You know what I've done is I've implemented more procedures and rules, and now we need to have 5 people in the room to approve each star that goes out the door. Or you say, I know, oh my gosh, that recruiter, they just aren't fast enough. If they had found me the manager, I wouldn't be here in the weeds. Or you say, I think you're right. I wish I were more high level, I wish I didn't have these issues, but if you promoted me to VP, then I could hire a director underneath me to handle all of these things, and then all of our problems would disappear. This does not make him very happy. Mistakes? No mistakes? Do you think it was perfect? We can move on. Not being realistic. Didn't even know that was a thing. Oh yeah, and it's, understanding how people work in the organization and knowing that when the chain of command is appropriate and knowing when it's just about personal relationships. All right, so let's talk about it. In the redo, a few years later, you're like, hey, listen, I don't agree. I'm going to come back to you with 3 business cases, and we're going to talk about this. And instead of saying we don't have resources, you're like, here are the business consequences of that path. When you're talking with your team, you come up with a decision-making and an escalation path. And you say, hey, here are the things you're responsible for. I trust you. I'll have your back. If such and such happens, escalate it to me. When you talk to the teams, you don't just say, this is what we're doing. You say, Team A, this is what it means to you. Team A, this is what it means to you. And you talk cross-functionally in your meetings. And then you groom your people. You say, hey, listen, I've got a lot on my plate. Would you mind going to a few meetings for me? And then you purposely block out time to be available to the rest of the organization. And the best way to get people to do what you want is to make them feel like it's their idea. Whoa, crazy thing, I have all these lightning bolts lying around. Whoa, really? You have lightning? Oh, I might need those. And then you make sure, you send a weekly report, and you make sure that your VP doesn't have any surprises. And voila, here we are, we're VPs. Ready? I want you to be your VP. And this is the first time you really have insight into the entire vision. And it turns out the vision is to paint the night sky. Whoa, that's kind of crazy. How am I going to create that? How am I going to translate that into something actionable and trackable? You're like, you know what? We need 5 billion stars, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell the team 10 billion just so I make sure that we really, 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 really get there. You go to your meetings, you're like, hey, sorry I'm late. And then people are like, oh, that's okay, the project is late too. And then as VP, you're not in the day-to-day. You're not as familiar with all the vocabulary, and you have to figure out how to answer these things that you know nothing about on the fly. But fortunately, you have your goal and you have your vision to be able to cut through. What should we do? Well, whichever one yields more stars. What, stars? I thought we were talking HR. She's clueless. And they say, hey, I've got a tricky problem. Should we veer X or should we veer Y? And you're like, listen, I want to trust you guys. I'm going to give you more details so you can make a confident decision, when actually what they really want is for you just to make a call. But at least, in this case, the VP thinks that they have their back, that she has their back. You run into the hallway, you love interacting with people, and you're like, you're running into this guy, he's like, hey, how's it going? I've never met you. By any chance, do you like lightning? You're like, oh yeah, I love lightning. Time has passed by, and now you need stats for tomorrow's board meeting. And progress has been slow, but what you tell the board is, hey, this has been a maintenance quarter. You're investing in the business. Everything will be up and to the right from here on out. And the board buys it, but your CEO doesn't. And he says, I need more visibility into whether you're really going to hit your goal. So you say, okay, well, I need to have more update meetings. And so you gather all of your directors into the room, and they talk about all the things going on. I have 4 meetings, I have 3 meetings, I have 2. Yay, we're up to date. Now you have time to go travel around the world, do networking, build the reputation for your company. And when you come back, what is this? Again, lightning. You guys, stop. What is this ice cream social? We should only be working on things that move the needle. Oh, focus, focus, focus. You go to your CEO and you say, good news. Everybody was doing lightning, but then I switched it. Now we're all doing stars. Everything's great. And he says, you really can't interfere on a day-to-day basis like that. And you're like, I can't win. Okay, how do I do that? How do I not interfere? And you say to your director, listen, if you hit this number, I'll give you a bonus. Take it or leave it. And they say, I don't think we have the resources. Yay! You are providing autonomy. Your team is motivated. 2 months later. I hit the number by counting next quarter's inventory. But that's not the spirit of our vision. And half the Eng team just walked out. I could get fired. Why didn't you tell me this? This is officially a fire. Mistakes?
I think setting unrealistic goals without getting feedback at the team what actually could be done, so she really didn't understand.
Absolutely. 10. Cool. All right, so moving on. I'm just going to finish off with the CEO. So thanks for being on time. Of course, all of these little tiny things you do as VP, they have huge repercussions for how the rest of the organization moves forward. Those include things like being on time, making sure you have enough gas in your car, making sure your phone is charged. And instead of thinking about, how am I going to swoop in and save the day, your real question, once you see the lightning, it's too late. What you should really be thinking about is, do you have the org structure to produce what you want from day one? Once you see a problem, it's really hard to fix it. And your goal to be able to build your vocabulary is to sample meetings, and sometimes you go to meetings and you don't even say a thing, you just listen. And a VP always, always, always has a plan B. Even if they say, it's plan A, we've got to move forward, the world will end, there's always a plan B. Now we're CEO. You have a vision. Vision is to paint the night sky. Say, this is our goal. With a vision like this, who couldn't be more excited? And you're surprised. Everybody, people really take some convincing. I joined this company 12 months ago for a different vision. And after hearing no so much, all you want to do is hire a VP who says yes. Here's your guy. Market, everybody is saying that they love your company. Surely, whatever is coming up, they'll love it too. But whoa, what gets delivered is a total surprise. You ask what went wrong, and everybody points to each other, but you know that the real person at fault is probably you. Why has the team become the way it is? I want a fast, nimble, innovative company. And your HR says, you know what? That's a cultural problem that will probably take 2 to 3 years to fix. And you're thinking 2 to 3 years out before I could even have a team that I think will accomplish what I want to do. Am I even the right person to lead that team? It's the first time you've even considered that there could be an end of the road. And you haven't thought at all about your replacement. In the meanwhile, you're saying the building is on fire, but you should see what's coming in Q4. But you also want to make sure this is the first time your job really has legal repercussions, that you don't end up in jail. And with all of this day-to-day going on, maybe you did lose a little bit of sight towards the vision. Mistakes? I'll move on just really fast. The vision is based upon not only what you want, but also what the organization can achieve. And being a CEO is an exercise in change management. It is incredibly unlikely that the vision that you come up with or that your team comes up with, that the organization is just poised to move forward and happily trot forward. When you're hiring your VPs, you don't hire people who like the vision, you hire people into your blind spots and what you actually need. And when the market says, oh my gosh, I love your company, you think, oh my gosh, I do not want to be the person, the CEO, who squanders that goodwill. What can I do today that will make sure that they're still saying that in 18 months? But when everybody is aligned, then we can achieve great things together. That's it. Thank you.